that policy in and by itself is illegal, and it's making our communities less safe.
This week in Pennsylvania, a push to crack down on illegal immigrants in PA as that topic continues to gain political traction across the U.S. Gun control bills take center stage in the State House committee this week, but will they just be shot down by the Senate? And what the state wants you to do if you come across a flock of turkeys. Cooking them is not the right answer. Hello and welcome to This Week in Pennsylvania. I'm Dennis Owens. We are covering hot topics in PA policy and politics, as well as the issues that are important to you and your family. Well, America's southern border is being called a crisis as undocumented folks flood into the U.S. every day. Who are they? Where are they going? And how do we handle them humanely? Those are just some of the questions. The Commonwealth is not on that border, but Pennsylvania lawmakers are pushing bills to crack down on those not here legally. Philadelphia is a sanctuary city. A handful of PA counties are too, refusing to turn over to the feds detained immigrants in the country illegally.
What they're selling to their interest groups is that we are not cooperating with immigration enforcement. That's what it is.
House Bill 1840 would ban municipalities from becoming sanctuaries and also let victims sue if those places knowingly release an undocumented person who goes on to commit a crime or cause damage.
They could be held liable for that, and rightfully so. If they are now violating the law, which they're already doing.
If you commit a crime, it doesn't matter what your legal status is, you're getting locked up, right? You're going to be held accountable.
Yohani Cepeda Freites represents Redding. Her parents, Dominican immigrants. She says there's many immigrants in PA, most paying taxes and working hard, and too often demonized.
I have a problem when information is oftentimes distorted and undocumented folks are automatically labeled with being criminals. Everyone wants a piece of the American dream, right? That's the beauty of our country.
But ugly is how Republican Ryan McKenzie describes the southern border, and his package of bills target those in PA illegally.
It's not xenophobic to want to talk about solutions for the border and what we should do to fix that problem.
While mostly a Republican rallying cry, Frank Burns, a Democrat from Cambria County, lent his support to the sanctuary city ban, calling them unfair to taxpayers, adding, "Call me names if you want, but I think the top priority of any elected official in Pennsylvania should be taking care of the people who are already and legally here." Burns and McKenzie, who's now running for Congress in the Lehigh Valley, no doubt recognize that cracking down on illegals is a winning issue. Freites concedes that, but urges us to remember there are people behind those politics.
We look at our history, how this country was created, how the city and state were built. It was on the backs of immigrants.
Now, Democrats control the state house. It is unclear whether they'll move immigration-related bills. Well, it's 2024, and one of the top races in the entire country is for U.S. Senate here in Pennsylvania, and the sparring match is already underway. Democrat Bob Casey is the three-term incumbent. This week, he discussed his bill that would increase technology and staffing at the southern border to detect and deter the influx of fentanyl. He blames Mexico and China for a lot of the illegal drugs in this country. He also took a swipe at his Republican opponent, Dave McCormick, who previously managed a hedge fund that did business in China.
Mr. McCormick lined his pockets by making millions of dollars by investing, not just investing in China, but investing for China. So this candidate for office in Pennsylvania, who, by the way, lied about where he lives. He lives in Connecticut, and he's lied about that, and the Associated Press caught him in the lie. But this same candidate has made a lot of his fortune off of China, investing in China and investing for China.
Casey is the son of former Governor Bob Casey. He has never lost a statewide general election. As for McCormick, we caught up with him at the Farm Show last week. He blames President Biden for the problems on the southern border and his handling of the Middle East, and calls Casey complicit in those problems and a rubber stamp on Biden policies. But McCormick also knows the Casey name has been the gold standard in PA politics. So how does he beat him?
80% of Pennsylvanians think the country's headed in the wrong direction. Bob Casey's been in the Senate for 17 years. In the most consequential state in the country, where the country was born, fifth largest economy, battleground state, Bob Casey's been inconsequential. And he's voted with Joe Biden 98% of the time.
McCormick narrowly lost a Republican primary in 2022 to Donald Trump-endorsed Mehmet Oz, who then lost to John Fetterman in the Senate's general election. He is thus far unopposed in the GOP primary. Sarah Innamorato is Allegheny County's first female executive, and she recently sat down with the newest member of the This Week in Pennsylvania family, KDKA in Pittsburgh, and their legendary political reporter, John Delano. Innamorato considers herself a progressive, has an ambitious agenda. She gave county workers a raise on day one, said many homes need to be reassessed, though that likely doesn't happen in 2024. She wouldn't take a read my lips, no new tax pledge, though.
So no new taxes, at least for 2024, but no commitment beyond that.
We have to do what's right by the county, and so we need to determine what programs are important to the people of this region.
And Innamorato is responsible for Allegheny County's $3 billion county budget. House Democrats took another crack at gun control laws this week. A package of 5 bills passed the House Judiciary Committee. One would ban bump stocks, another would ban ghost guns and 3D guns, and still another would ban so-called assault weapons, which are hard to define. They all passed out of committee. Even if they pass the full House, the Republican-controlled Senate likely won't move them.
We're not going to stop just because Senate leaders are saying no. We're going to keep having the conversation and try to find that sweet spot to get something done. It's up to the Senate to decide if they want to protect our citizens or not.
We Second Amendment supporters, we don't like the violent criminals on the streets, but for us, the Second Amendment is a check and balance on government. We know that killer criminals are bad, but killer governments are far worse.
Every Democrat on the committee voted for the gun control measures. Every Republican voted against. Well, seniors, listen up. You may be entitled to a tax credit and not even know it. The property tax rent rebate program has been enhanced by the state, is offering money to about 175,000 additional Pennsylvanians. Income caps were lifted and the amount of money given out was also increased. Seniors can get up to $1,000 to help with rent and with property taxes. And if you make up to $45,000 a year, you are eligible for the program. But you must sign up by June 30th. The governor urges seniors to do it sooner and reminds them it's a promise kept.
We try and get stuff done, like tangible, practical stuff. And I know it's so frustrating sometimes when you look at government at different levels, right? And especially down in D.C., notwithstanding our congresswoman's great work, like you sort of wonder, what are they doing, right? Well, here in Harrisburg, here in Pennsylvania, we got that get stuff done attitude.
You can sign up online. We have a link to the program on our website, thisweekinpennsylvania.com. Well, if you see a flock of turkeys, the State Game Commission wants to know about it. They want you to fill out a survey about where you saw the turkeys and what type of land they were on. The Game Commission will then try to find them, put on leg bands, and then release them. The Game Commission currently studying Pennsylvania's turkey population.
Some of those turkeys will also get GPS transmitters in those areas of the state that are part of those study areas for the population and movement study. But folks anywhere can help out by, when they see turkey flocks, going online, reporting them to the Game Commission.
That online survey ends March 15th. We have a link to it, again, on our website, thisweekinpennsylvania.com. Two lawmakers in the middle of the debate over properly funding public schools are going to join us next. Mike Sturla and Kristen Phillips-Hill after the break. Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. It is a very cold weekend across the Commonwealth, but one of the hottest topics statewide is how to constitutionally fund public schools in PA. A legislative commission held hearings, studied the issue, and recently released a report. We have the two chairs, State Representative Mike Sturla, Democrat from Lancaster County, and Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill, Republican from York County. Thank you both for being back with us on this show. It's an important topic. We'll start ladies first. Senator, there were two reports, but only one of them adopted. It basically said we need to come up with an additional $5.1 billion more for schools. Where's that money coming from?
Well, I think that's ultimately going to be the great challenge. And I will tell you this, there was a lot of consensus in the commission with regard to how we craft that formula to drive out basic education funding dollars. We spent over 7 months. We went to over 10 counties. We had 14 hearings, thousands of pages of testimony, public comment through a portal. We had tremendous public engagement. And I think that we found consensus in that we all want better outcomes for our students. We recognize this is their platform for their future success. We want them to be successful, and we want a stronger system of public education. And I will say this, I appreciate the good gentleman from Lancaster County, Representative Sterla's willingness to engage in this process. And the headlines talk a lot about the difference, and the key one you've identified is how we come up with that amount of money. Remembering that we have put a record amount of dollars into public education since this case was filed. And those are not my words, Dennis. Those are the words of former Governor Tom Wolf and Governor Josh Shapiro. So I think it's important that we begin with what we agree on, the crafting of that actual formula, and then move forward.
I want to turn to the good gentleman from Lancaster County. This report isn't binding on the legislature. It takes legislative approval. How do you realistically get it through the legislature?
Well, look, the governor's administration was on that commission also. They voted for this. The governor said he's going to include this in his budget. Look, the numbers he's projected for the budget are more conservative than the IFO, and they're convinced that they can still fund this. We'll take this 1 year at a time, but if you don't set yourself these goals, you never get there. I mean, we saw this with the last commission. We said, we'll get there at some point in time. And the courts basically said, yeah, but some point in time isn't a timeline. It's just a wish list. And we'll put more money in. I mean, we put more money in, and the court said, not enough. So what we've done is looked at what the courts agreed seemed to be reasonable and said, we're going to set up a timeline, 7 years, to get these dollars pushed out to school districts that need it. There are school districts that are getting close to half of what we should be sending them from the state in order for them to adequately and equitably educate their kids. And so the idea that, well, we aren't sure where the money's coming from, I'm not sure what those kids are supposed to do. And unless we're willing to take money from some school districts and give it to others, and no one's been willing to do that to this point, and even then, you're just taking money from everybody. I'm not sure. I believe there's enough dollars to do this in our budgets moving forward with ongoing revenues, and as long as we are committed to making sure those dollars go where they need to go, and not just saying, well, everybody's got to get the biggest chunk of the pie, whether they already have enough money or not. And that's what this final commission report sets out to do, and I believe does it pretty well.
Okay, so we've just outlined the problem in trying to get this through, and it won't be easy. Federal money is drying up, as you know. Yes, we have a good rainy day fund, but the Independent Fiscal Office, the IFO that you just referenced, said that in the next, in a year from now, we're back to a $3 billion structural deficit. So going back, is that a concern to you, Senator?
Oh, Dennis, it's absolutely a concern. And I think back to prior to my time in the General Assembly, when there was a massive influx of federal dollars that were sent to the school districts. And then when those dollars dried up and the state couldn't pass those forward, people screamed out that there were education fiscal cuts. There weren't. There just was no more federal dollars. Federal dollars have dried up. Rainy day funds are one-time dollars. This has to be sustained and continuous. The other thing that hasn't really been spoken to in the report referenced by Representative Sterla is the need for accountability. We can't just continue to throw money at a problem and expect it to change. We hear constantly about schools with 0% proficiency in math and 0% proficiency in English. And where is the accountability? Will dollars go into programs that have proven outcomes and our proven strategies for student success.
Well, let me ask that
A
question,
lot
because you
more
brought
than
it up.
just
You
money.
raised it, and that's a good question. I want to turn to Representative Sterler, because I've talked to a lot of politicians who says it appears that a lot in the education community just want to check the box to say, yep, another record year of funding, yep, another record year of funding, and they're measuring success by how much money they're plowing in and not what are we getting out and how are we knowing that these dollars are well spent and that kids are being educated, because I think Republican and Democrat and independents and everybody want to see kids in Pennsylvania be educated, but they also want their dollars to be well spent. Where is the accountability?
Yeah. Well, look, I think one of the reasons that I think the administration was supportive of this is that they have set up a host of programs that we know to be effective to get results. And I've been around long enough that back in 2008, the state of Pennsylvania was getting the best improvement in test results for students of any state in the nation. The best of any state in the nation. And that's because we had what were then called accountability block grants and said, we're going to give you money, but you have to use it for programs that have proven results. And we got results. The administration has those programs in place, and these dollars that get pushed out there's going to be a menu that people can use to do those programs. So we're not just throwing money at this. We're putting money into programs that have proven results and that will then be used in those school districts that need to have improvement.
Okay, Representative Sterler.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the accountability.
We have so much more to talk about, but unfortunately, we're now out of time. I want to thank both of you for your willingness to come on. It's an important topic, and we're going to be talking about it again, I have a feeling. This isn't going away, and there's a lot of work still to be done on getting it through the legislature. Thank you both for being willing to talk with us today.
Thanks
for
you,
having us.
Dennis.
Folks, you
Always a pleasure.
Stay right there. More This Week in Pennsylvania when we come right back.
We're trying to continue to divide and conquer, continue to instill fear, continue to focus our efforts in labeling and attacking and in separating families.
And if somebody is breaking the law, then yes, we want to make sure that we're cracking down on that.
And welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We're joined by our analyst, Christopher Nicholas, the Eagle Consulting Group, J.J. Abbott, former press secretary to Governor Wolf, now executive director, Commonwealth Communications. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. JJ, I want to begin with you. If abortion is an issue that Democrats think they can win on and hit the Republicans over the head with, is immigration rapidly becoming the Republicans' cudgel?
Well, we're going to see. I mean, but I think it's worth remembering in the last few election cycles, Republicans have run pretty aggressive and sometimes really gross campaigns around immigration. You might remember Scott Wagner in 2018 ran his campaign almost exclusively about the quote unquote caravan, and he lost to my former boss, Governor Wolf, by 17 points. I think what we're seeing here is more political opportunism from Representative McKenzie, given he's now running for Congress. But I think it's worth noting that the latest news is that President Biden and Democratic leaders in Congress are nearing a deal with Republicans in the Senate, but it is the caucus that Representative McKenzie wants to join, the House Republican majority, that is seemingly going to stand in the way of that bipartisan agreement. So I think the bigger question here is that can the MAGA Republicans in the House majority prove that they can govern? Because right now it feels like that's certainly not the case. And, the only reason that the government is continuing to operate is because the Democrats continue to bail them out.
Let me bring Chris into this. Chris, do Republicans see immigration as a weakness for Democrats?
Sure. It's not by accident that President Biden's approval ratings are in the tank in the mid-30s. Immigration has become such a big issue now that you're even seeing Democratic members of Congress come to that realization, especially the ones in vulnerable seats. As JJ said, politics plays part in this, but I've said for a long time it's hard to criticize President Biden's immigration plan because he doesn't have one, nor does he seem to care.
Well, and just to be clear, I know there's partisanship and Biden is now the president, but you could argue that for 40 years this hasn't been appropriately dealt with in Washington. So that's both parties, pucks on all sides. But we have to take a quick break. We're going to come back with our analysts in just a minute. Stay right there. Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania, joined by our analysts, J.J. Abbott and Christopher Nicholas. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being with us. 2024 election year is on. There was a little sparring in the U.S. Senate race between Bob Casey and Dave McCormick. Chris, let's start with you. Casey is, as we mentioned, the gold standard. He's never lost a general election statewide. Any reason to think that's going to change this year?
Well, he has run statewide 8 times, so he's obviously a fixture and a career politician. So the question for voters in the fall, this almost seems like it's fall now, the way these two guys are going at it, will have to make a decision on if they want a new voice in Senate or a continuation of the one that is basically just an echo of Joe Biden. So I think that's the challenge for both candidates, is to tell how they would be different, and for Bob Casey to say what he might do differently in this term that he hasn't done before, because no one can identify anything Casey has done.
JJ, our Democrats know that he has never really lost, and his name is, as I said, a gold standard. Are they concerned this time around?
Well, I think every election in a presidential year statewide is competitive. And so, I think one thing that Bob Casey does very well is he is a great campaigner, and he works incredibly hard in his campaigns as well as governing. I think it's completely nonsense to say he hasn't done anything. He's delivered billions of dollars of investment into the state. He's led on some of the most important healthcare issues and improvements that have been made. I think the bigger question is, can Dave McCormick convince voters that he's not a complete opportunist? He's completely changed his position on abortion. He's trying to be tough on China after investing billions there. He's saying he wants to go shake up Washington when, in fact, Dave McCormick went to Washington before Bob Casey and was part of the Bush administration and the Treasury Department that let Wall Street crash the economy. And what did Dave McCormick do? He
hate to stop you mid-breath, but we're out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us on This Week in Pennsylvania. Hope to see you next week.